Good evening, Crypt Keepers, and welcome to Cryptique. I'm joined as always by my podcast partner in the paranormal, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited. I love the concept of remote viewing and the potential implications, and I love that it's something where there are tons of people who are credible with real, verifiable military history who say the military does this, and it's not just ours.
And it works.
But for some reason, it's still considered woo.
Yeah, I
most
agree.
of the world. And I also loved The Men Who Stare at Goats. That was such like a stupid movie, but it was so fun.
They are the best invention ever. Thank you, God, for painting goats. I mean, if you guys haven't seen a video of painting goats, it will cheer you up. So if you're having a bad day, just remember, hey, painting goats. Who's joining us tonight, Ryan?
Tonight we are talking to Edward Dames, Major of the U.S. Army, who is currently somewhat retired and is a distinguished figure in the world of remote viewing. As an original member of the U.S. Army's prototype remote viewing training program and former training and operations officer for the Defense Intelligence Agency's Psychic Intelligence Unit, Dames brings a unique blend of military expertise and a pioneering spirit to the field. Currently serving as the executive director of the Matrix Intelligence Agency, a leading private consulting group, Dames continues to shape the landscape of remote viewing applications. His influence extends beyond the professional realm, as evidenced by his role as a technical consultant for the feature film Suspect Zero, where he not only advised on remote viewing, but also coached Sir Ben Kingsley and portrayed an FBI remote viewing instructor on screen. And those are not actually his only credits if you look him up on IMDb. But join us as we delve into the remarkable journey and multifaceted contributions of Ed Dames in the realm of remote viewing.
Cryptique is proud to welcome Major Ed Dames. Well, we're proud to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you're doing well.
Pleasure of mine, Jay.
All right. Can you tell the listeners, and we'll have all the notes and everything, all the links in the notes, but can you just tell them where they can go to find you on the internet in case they want to follow along while we're doing this interview?
Of course. My primary website is remoteviewingmatrix.com. That's my central point of contact for the public.
Okay. All right. So how did this all begin for you? You were a young man, you decided you wanted to serve your country, and then where did things go from there?
Well, I enlisted in the Army at 17, right? Still in high school, actually. Airborne infantry, so I became a paratrooper just during the Vietnam War. And then I switched to the Army Security Agency, still enlisted, and served time there. So a total of 6 years and 9 months enlisted. I got out, went to UC Berkeley for 4 years, studied biophysics and Chinese Mandarin, and then I decided that the civilian life was so boring. I went back in because I knew some assignments for officers were very sexy, extremely sexy. The James Bond stuff for real. So I went back in, a commissioned officer, in 1978. And then after that, I was assigned to the 2nd Army Cavalry Regiment in Germany as the regiment's historic first electronic warfare officer. And after that, I went into the deep, dark world of intel. I was selected to go to a special assignment, and it was all undercover and black units from there. And I made my way to the Office of Secretary of Defense, and as a spy master, particularly in biological warfare arenas. And so I had everything at my disposal at that level, celestial levels of intelligence. And my primary targets were esoteric Russian developments, exotic technology, biological warfare, nuclear warfare, and in some cases, the Russian enterprises were so secret by
Mm-hmm.
hook or by crook, even with everything at my disposal, satellites, agents on the ground, and things I still can't talk about, I couldn't crack that nut. But I became aware of one of my assets that
Mm-hmm.
was a hip pocket asset. And this was a nascent Army remote viewing unit, and that you guys know about it historically. It's all
Mm-hmm.
there. And I began to use them to cross queue my assets. For instance, I would target, let's say, a known, well, at least known to us in Intel, Russian Biological Warfare Research Institute, let's say in Zagorsk, about 80 clicks south of Moscow. And the RV unit was giving me such good intel
Mm-hmm.
that I was able to redirect both my satellites and my agents on the ground to better collect intel from that particular institute, as an example. So I became so enthralled with this unit, I stepped down from these celestial levels of government and took over after being trained by the great Ingo Swann, the father of remote viewing. Trained in remote viewing, I took over as operations and training officer,
Sure.
and the rest is just history.
Fantastic. So you pioneered this remote viewing program in the military.
No,
And
I did not.
I think that, a lot of people have ideas of what they think it is.
Well,
But can you tell
my
us what remote viewing is and what it is not? Like,
of
is it
course, yeah,
considered a.
yeah, of course. So we're dealing with about a 5 second delay, I think, here. So I got to get used to that. And uh, so Ingo Swann is the father of remote viewing, the late Ingo Swann. And unlike other famous, very, very gifted natural psychics in the West, Ingo studied himself, his cognitive behavior when he was dead on target. And he put together a model of what he was doing, called it remote viewing. And this model was my job to take this model that he developed and
Mhm,
back into the deep dark world of intelligence,
mhm,
because his discovery was not classified. So it was my job to take it in to our arena, massage it into a useful information collection tool that could be used to support the intelligence community. So that's what I had to do. It's evolved over many 40 years now. It's evolved greatly, but I had to evolve it to answer some very tough questions. So essentially, what remote viewing is, especially technical remote viewing, is what I employ in my work. What it is, it's systematic ESP. It's systematic clairvoyance. So we take what Ingo discovered, how he was processing
okay.
cognitively data against the target, moment to moment to moment, from the basic format
Mhm,
all the way up to higher level contact with the target, where he is actually perceiving the activities at a secret installation, and all the details about it, a complete description, which is what we need uh, to do that. But it's systematic intelligence. So we take his discovery, his
mhm,
model, and that's what we use as the basics. Of course, it's evolved quite a bit. But what it's not is being psychic. Yes, we avail ourselves of our natural birthright of being psychic. Even animals are psychic to some degree. So we take that and we systematize it. We turn it into a
mhm,
model. You may be born with the ability to play basketball quite well, but unless you have a model for what basketball is before it even existed, then you're not going to play basketball. And even if you have the model, if you don't have a coach in training, you're not going to play basketball. So, without it's a trained skill,
sure.
and that avails itself. It's an information collection skill, and it avails ourselves of our natural psychic abilities. And it gets very complex. Yes, indeed. It takes about 2 years to really master it before I would hire you. For instance, you need to learn the fundamentals of remote viewing, which
Mhm,
is offered on my site as a video streaming course, and then you could use it for a variety of day-to-day
sure.
things to support your own life and others. But if you really want to be a pro, there's 5 clinics that I've taught, and those are video streamed as well. you'd have to go through all 5 because those are industrial strength, not simply skill enhancement clinics. They're
Sure.
for professionals. So you get to see the way professionals work. And if you master those, then you're in a position where I might hire you as a professional.
And if someone's hired, what does that look like? Do you give them like coordinates for a target? How do you like utilize the people that work for you?
Well, it's difficult without the context that you would need. Because, for instance, it's difficult to even describe technical remote viewing because there's no common denominator for it and anything
Yeah.
else that you've ever been exposed to or learned. And without that common denominator, you can just describe it as it. In order to understand it, you need a familiarization course that takes about 2 or 3 days. Then you would say, aha, this is what it is. Wow, it's a structure. But having said that, my pros in the Matrix Intelligence Agency, which is my own intelligence agency, my pros get paid about $200 for a 45-minute
Right.
session. And the session consists of a complete description of their target. Most of my targets are corporate. For instance, I've worked examples. For instance, the late Lawrence Rockefeller hired my agency to do one contract was atmospheric ozone depletion, projected consequences, and remedial technologies. The Bechtel Corporation was extracting lunar oxygen from lunar rock. For the Crown Prince of Liechtenstein, advanced deep space propulsion systems. And the proviso there, which it had to be a deliverable, was a system or systems to be able to get a human being to Alpha Centauri and back in one human lifetime. And those are industrial strength contracts for GeneX and
Right.
companies like that. These are expensive contracts to find a vaccine for the HIV virus. AIDS is an epidemiological factor. HIV is the causative agent, those kinds of things. So my team would work 6 viewers, no more than 6. We don't employ any more than a team of 6 remote viewers because it's redundant and I have to pay them a lot of money. So there's no need for the extra information. They're professionals. They get it right. If they don't get it right, I fire them. It would be analogous to an airline pilot who missed the runway by, let's say, 20 meters. And he tells his boss, look how close I was, only 20 meters.
Yeah.
You're fired. So these are real pros. And if you saw some of their work, and you can on my site, then you would wonder, how did they do that? Well, it's like any other skill. You start out with the basics and you move on to being a pro.
What was it that made you want to get out of the military and go into the civilian realm of remote viewing?
There were 2 things. I had the best job in the world. I mean, I had everything at my disposal, but because of a certain Wednesday in the first Desert Storm, when we destroyed thousands and thousands and thousands of Iraqi men, fathers, brothers, and sons, completely destroyed them. I said, that's it. I can't support this kind of philosophy anymore. And there was one more thing on a personal level. We were using a lot of time in the psychic spying unit I was to look at UFO and ET phenomena. And it was so enthralling to me. I said, I can't talk about this or I can't do any more. I was getting my hands slapped for overusing that. All of the released CIA documents that you see that are associated with ETs and the UFO type of stuff, you'll see my initials on them, on all of them, ED. So I wanted to get out and devote full time to the UFO phenomenon, and I did. So I got out basically because of that, and I stopped doing corporate contracts for the most part because all that work is proprietary. and I can't talk to the public about how powerful this
Mm-hmm.
animal called technical remote viewing is because the work is proprietary. So I set up my own intelligence agency, and I went from
Yeah.
there.
So, what is the primary goal and objective of Matrix Intelligence Agency? Because it sounds like, you're not just all about making money, and you want to do good things for people. So tell us some of the good things that are coming out.
Well, I have my own agenda, which I'll mention momentarily. But the key is that I attacked a wide variety of targets. If you go to my website, you can see a sample of that right on the home page of where Noah's Ark is, where the Ark of the Covenant is,
Hmm.
and these kinds of high profile showpiece types of things that I want the public to see. There's a lot of classified stuff that we can't show the public. But
Hmm.
my primary agenda and what I will be working on
Sure.
about 90 minutes from now, when we end this discussion, is missing children, missing and murdered children, and the monster hunt that follows the finding
Mm.
child murderers. And you'll see examples of that on my website as well. So that brings closure to family. I don't work with
Mm.
families uh, of reasons that we can go into if you want. But I only work with the FBI and law enforcement. So I've got FBI's most wanted, 10 most wanted, a couple of those on the site. You can actually see what I prepared. For instance, Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark was never completed. Noah
Okay.
died before it was completed. So I've got the overhead of the construction site, plus where his village wrapped him up and put him in the twilight zone of a nearby cave. Got that overhead photography. I've got the street views of the FBI's most wanted, as well as the overhead photography. So we can do some powerful stuff, and I have samples of all of that on the site. But my most of my own personal time is spent doing uh, missing children. I'd say a good 80% of my own time is spent on missing children. And you can see if they're dead, I can show you where they're at. I'll be on the road in a couple of days on the Pearl Pinson case. I know where her remains are, and her murderer. I don't need to find her murderer
Mm.
because he was killed in the FBI and California Highway Patrol shootout the day after he killed her. Those kind of things. So, but if a child is still alive, there's no way I can talk about it at all because people, if these abductors, these monsters find out, child traffickers find out that Major Doom is on their tracks, they're going to do something stupid, and you know what I mean. So that has to be a surprise for them when I work those kinds of things. And I could go on and on about a really interesting project, but the most of the examples are there for your listeners to see on my website.
Are there other kinds of sort of more, I don't know exactly how to say it, more civilian focused cases that you work on, sort of similar to the missing children, but not as far off as the Noah's Ark and sort of the historical stuff?
More with Major Ed Dames after a quick break. We now continue with Major Ed Dames.
Yeah, of course. There's some I really enjoy. For instance, I have an operation paintbrush, we call it. And you can see on my website the location of a stolen Renoir painting, stolen from Texas, and the location of a stolen Davidoff Morini Stradivarius violin. So hunting down objects to art is a lot of fun for me, and it's very fulfilling for the person when they get their artwork back. Um, let's see. I'm thinking of,
I bet.
again, the Zodiac Killer, Adolf Hitler's location, those kinds of things. Muhammad Atta is a interesting one. Muhammad Atta was the so-called ringleader for 9/11, right? Well, he's living with his father in Cairo, Egypt. Of course, they
Hmm.
found his singed passport on the street down there, but that all that
Hmm.
narrative is simply a lie, an absolute lie. So we tracked him down after we determined he was alive. So he's living with his father. This is the head of 9/11. Drove his plane. It's a lie. So I've got overhead and street view of his house in Cairo, Egypt, those kinds of things. If people are interested, um, Madeline McCann is my favorite. Madeline McCann just turned 21 in May, and she was trafficked through
Hmm.
Vancouver. Do you remember Madeline McCann case,
I
Jay?
do. Yeah, it
Okay,
was big news. That. Yeah, that happened in Europe, right? That was Italy
yeah,
or
no.
Belgium.
Her mom and dad, both physicians, British physicians, were vacationing in Portugal, and that's where she was abducted. Big, huge case, and still not brought to closure.
Okay.
But I'm going to fix that. So she was
Hmm.
trafficked through Vancouver, Canada, into the States, through Seattle into the States, and she was purchased. She was mm, uh, how do you by a U.S. Very wealthy couple in Las Vegas, Nevada. And she spent most of her years there. She graduated from high school in Las Vegas, and she's living in the the pictures that are on my website, where she's actually living and things like that, the high school that she graduated from, those kinds of things. So that's my biggest case, is to bring her home to her biological parents. She's going to need some psychological help, obviously. Kids like that do. So folks like
Sure.
Elizabeth Smart and others would be in the best position to help her realize, who she is and what happened. So that's my key case right now. I
Hmm.
think we tried over the years to look for Atlantis, and we found out that Atlantis doesn't exist. It's an allegory, and now most historians are beginning to believe that Plato's Atlantis was indeed an allegory, and it did not exist uh, as a material city or outliers.
Gotcha. What has been your most challenging case? Just is it where, some locations that you're going to are more difficult to get to than others, or, how does that work? What's been like your biggest challenge in the field?
The biggest challenges are in the scientific arena. For instance, my son is the world's leading plasma chemist, and he has problems of his own. I mean, he's a great scientist, the world's leader. But I tell him, I said, look, we can get down to the molecular level and describe a compound or a chemical, but we have very difficult time at the atomic level. Anything that deals with at the atomic level, so difficulty there. The things that are beyond, there's a lot of things that are beyond our ken as human beings, and those present insurmountable problems. But some may not be beyond our ken, but they're still insurmountable. The biggest challenge that I had in my 40-year career is cattle mutilations, animal mutilations. To this day, we cannot understand the dynamics and the
Hmm.
mechanics of what's causing cattle mutilations. It's so difficult. We've tried our best, and we'll keep on trying, but to date, it's been more than a bugbear. It's just been a tough nut to crack. I've cracked a lot of tough nuts, but this one, it may be beyond our ken, because we're dealing with something that's parsing in and out of dimensions, coming in, doing the dams to animals, and parsing back out. It's scary as heck, but yeah, that's my
Yeah.
biggest challenge.
So when you're doing a seminar, class, training, however you want to label the different programs that you have available, how is it different than just being in a regular classroom? Are people, are they given, like online stuff to read through, and then you go into a session like teaching them how to focus on a certain thing? How does that work if someone's wanting to learn?
Well, uh, the streaming, the video streaming classroom is taped. It's actually all of my workshops, the fundamentals of remote viewing workshops, and it's videos of all those workshops. So you get to see, if you look at those, exactly what happens in a workshop. When I teach one-on-one, it's quite different, of course. But in a workshop for the first day, uh, people are given a blind target. They don't know what the target is. And it's basic stuff, just basic stuff, not how to extract oxygen from a lunar rock or anything like that. Um, it's things like the Eiffel Tower or a mountain or a lake or a ship on the sea or a rocket launch, something like that. A color photograph is put inside an envelope, and the envelope is assigned random numbers. And the people are only given those random numbers, and I talk them through this systematic process that is the model, the structure for remote viewing, so they get to understand how different it is. Remote viewing is direct knowledge. It's direct knowledge. There's no middleman. In school, we learn about something by studying it over and over and for a length of time. But that's not the way that the case is in terms of remote viewing. Remote viewing is direct knowledge, and it's a three-part process: setting up the target, whether it's the Eiffel Tower or the next tactical nuclear weapon detonation site. It comes down to correctly setting up the target, which is difficult to learn. And then the remote viewing session itself, and then the analysis. Well, during setting up the problem, and analysis requires you to put your thinking cap on to decide where you want to go and where you want your unconscious to go. And you're going to go into a theta state in a few minutes after you start the remote viewing process, and there is no thinking allowed, zero. Very similar or analogous to playing the piano. You don't. Once you start playing that piece, you do not stop and think about the note that you just played. You keep on moving. The structure that we have is similar to sheet music. The sheet music that you're looking at to play the piano is similar analogously to our remote viewing structure. Step by step by step, everybody does the same thing, but the results are different because the targets are different. So the big frustration for students and for me and my other instructors is, and it is very frustrating, is the students are put into a position of 45 minutes, let's say, where they're not allowed to think. They just have to follow the sheet music. So it would be like learning how to follow sheet music for the first time and playing a musical piece.
Gotcha. Well, that's a nice picture to paint. I like that it's not something where it's like, hey, come on in and we'll teach you how to do this in half an hour. Just
No, it can't.
mail your
Can't be
check
done.
here. So there's a lot of study that has to be done to be able to attain this kind of ability. All right. So you were on set and actually got to play a part in the movie Suspect Zero. Have you seen that movie, Ryan?
I haven't. No.
Oh, it's amazing. It's
Yeah,
just I haven't seen it in a long time, but tell us about your experience on there, because if you guys haven't seen the movie, it's amazing, and you did a great job coaching him, because Ben Kingsley really killed this spot.
Yeah, how did I miss a movie with Ben Kingsley in it?
yeah, that was pretty
And
neat.
Aaron Eckhart. Sorry. Go on.
Yeah, I get to have some fun sometimes because it's remote viewing is so novel, and the military psychic spying team was so novel that Hollywood likes to, and they run out of ideas. I mean, Chris Carter with the X Files was begging me for help, and the Roy Scheider before he died. They tried to get Sequest to work, which was a one episode. I mean, one segment, and they asked me pleaded with help on that too. So these guys run out of ideas, but the Tom Cruise wanted to play me in the movie Suspect Zero, but he was making the Last Samurai in New Zealand, so he asked Sir Ben
Nice.
Kingsley to fill in for him. So I got to coach Sir Ben Kingsley for that movie,
Mhm.
and I have a cameo as an FBI instructor in the movie, as well as the technical advisor. And I did that in Tom's office, and it was neat because Tom
That's
took
cool.
Lucille Ball's old office in Paramount. So walk up the stairs, you see all these old I Love Lucy photos on the wall. It was pretty neat type of thing. When I was coaching Sir Ben in the Hotel Marmot, where all the Hollywood trysts, famous trysts by the cat lady, I trained the cat lady, the original Catwoman. I trained her. I actually did, Lamar. And so we were there, and I was training Sir Ben, and the director, Elias Marriage, was there too. And I needed to illustrate something to finish up the training. We were almost done with all the basics. And I thought of an example
Hmm.
from AI, artificial intelligence, and I looked at I said, Sir Ben, yes, Major
Hmm.
Dames, did you see the movie AI? So he looks over at the director. He looks back at me. He says, Major Dames, I was the narrative voice for the movie and also the voice of the Techno 3 robot. I could feel how red my face was. Oh, so I tried to recover. Oh, so you did see the
Oh, that's
movie. All right,
funny.
that kind of thing. And uh, Kevin Spacey plays me as a role model in the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats. And I if you have the back end of the movie, I'm interviewed for the real story on that. So I get to have some fun sometimes rather than finding the remains of dead kids.
Well, yeah, you definitely deserve a little bit of nice things in your life too. It can't all be doom and gloom. So now you had mentioned earlier the Zodiac, and I think I had heard you mention DB Cooper at some point. Have you tried to locate them? Have you had any luck with those two? Or
Yeah, those are good examples for your show. The Zodiac Killer, the way, um, let's see, maybe let's discuss DB Cooper first. DB Cooper, uh, he died on the slopes of Mount St. Helens. He not right away. I think he broke his leg or something. But yes, I've got the location pinpoint, and I will go up myself and film that in the summer. But more than that, and this should be interesting for you and your listeners about how we attack a problem set, whether it's finding a
mm-hmm.
vaccine or something else like that. The key thing
Sure.
about DB Cooper is
Mm-hmm.
what his real name is. So we can't use DB Cooper in a search term, a collective unconscious search term, because it
Mm-hmm.
isn't a real person. Now we have other ways of
Mm-hmm.
getting around that. But so what I look at, I just take his the sketches that the forensic artist created. So that there's chain of custody between those sketches
Mm-hmm.
and the actual person that described him. There's complete chain of custody. There's no breaks. So we have that. We can use the sketches as
Mm-hmm.
target reference material to reference that. So we take those sketches and we look at that person's
Mm-hmm.
father, the father's present location. And in the case of D.B. Cooper, there's a very high likelihood because of
Mm-hmm.
the age, the time, the exigencies of time, there's a very high likelihood that the father is dead. And so there's also a very high likelihood that the father may be in a cemetery somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This is how we solve the
Yeah.
Gemini killer, too. So I locate and have located the gravestone of his father. Now, why is that important? Tell me.
So we can know who he is.
Find the name.
The name is on the freaking gravestone. So that's the guy's name. So we can take it from there, and provide that information to the authorities. Same thing with the Gemini. I'm sorry, the Zodiac killer. The Zodiac killer. the way we have to target that, and this is
Hmm.
important, folks, that it's not a willy-nilly approach to, oh, let's go find the Zodiac killer, dead or alive, right? We have to work very, very precisely in setting the target up. And
Right.
the old adage of junk in and junk out applies also to our work. So I take what one of the Zodiac killer's uh, victims, and that is a victim that any reasonable law
Right.
enforcement agency will say, yes, this is one of his victims. I take that victim, her, a young girl, one of his first victims,
Right.
and then I recreate her death. Death is an event. So I
Hmm.
recreate all the essential elements of information, my colleagues and I, about her death, whether it's Ron Goldman's
Sure.
death or something. So I recreate all of that. So I make sure I've got the actual killer, a chain of custody on the killer. All right. Then I look for the killer, the killer, her killer's present location. And in the case of the Zodiac killer, he's deceased and he's buried in a graveyard in the and you can see this. I've got photos of the graveyard and me in it. I didn't include
Hmm.
photographs of the grave. It's in the military part of a graveyard in uh, not Petaluma, but I forgot the town's name. It's in the Bay Area, but I'm going to go take pictures of myself standing next to
Sure.
his grave, and of course, his name is on that too. I can go from there and
Hmm.
backtrack to see where he was before he died. I'm sorry, where he was when he died. Who was there with him? Were they parents? I mean, were
Hmm.
they family members or something else like that? Go backtrack as far as I want. Those kind of things. So that's how we approach problems, and there are other tacks that we can take too for me to save money because I'm paying my subcontractors, my pros, a lot of money to do this, and I can do a sloppy algorithm, but it's going to cost me.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, we recently did a show on the Ariel School UFO incident, and I think that's a story that you're pretty heavily involved with, right? Can you tell us what your observations are on that? More with Major Ed Dames after a quick break. We now continue with Major Ed Dames.
You betcha. So after many years of researching, starting in the military unit. In the military unit, we started the contact protocol. So we use remote viewers in the military and the psychic spying unit to find a potential prospective zone, a contact zone with
Hmm.
what we thought were extraterrestrials, and they're not. They're ultra terrestrials. But anyway, so that was Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. So the Crown Prince of Liechtenstein, Hans Adam von Liechtenstein, paid for that project, and we got a lot of CE2s. I got to hire the best and the brightest from the engineers from the Skunk Works, from scientists from the Stanford Linear Accelerator. Hal Puthoff was there. I took Jacques Vallée to the field with me. All that stuff is history now. But we only got CE2s, flybys. When you get a CE3, that's another story that we may go into on your program. But in the end, I decided that, darn, there's so much stuff to look at here. I mean, and I was also dealing with Bigfoot, which I'm still dealing with. And before the show ends, we need to talk about how I'm dealing with the Sasquatch phenomenon. But I said, look, we got to take one of these nonsense events, and Jacques Vallée agrees with me that this system out there is presenting itself as a conundrum purposely, a problem to be solved. There's some of the stuff is just absolute nonsense. The Pacific Google pancake incident, all that kind of stuff. It's presented purposely as a conundrum to be solved. But you got to have the right tools to solve it. We've got them. But I said we have to punch through the lines somewhere. We're we're limited in terms of our resources, people, pros, and all of that. And long story short, I took the Ariel School event in 1994 in Rua, Zimbabwe, outside of Harare. I said, let's punch through here. It took resources for whatever outside agency that was that orchestrated that phantasmagorical event with those 60 kids, now adults. I said, let's punch through there. So we did a full court press for several years. 2 years were, yeah. So that was my decision to punch through the lines there, and we did. And I was also interested in, and Ariel School is not the only case where the outside system there confronts children. It's very interesting whenever they talk or telepathic. It's same thing with Bigfoot and other things. Whenever that system out there communicates telepathically, it's really very important to listen to what they're saying. Well, with the kids, it was you need to be better wards of your planet. Your planet is being hurt by the things that mankind is doing to it. And they're talking to children. Children are our future. These kids are grown now too, and they were greatly affected by that message and that event. So we studied this system out there, and we find out that all the UAPs and all the UFOs, almost all, are emanating from the Pukao Seamount, about 100 kilometers to the northwest, the northwest of Easter Island. The seamount's about 3,300 feet below the surface, and they're inside the seamount. Now, these are wraith-like beings which seem to be able to parse back and forth through into our material world and into wherever they exist in the other place. But they're the first time we really got good descriptions of them were with the Travis Walton case, where actually physical vehicle object. We don't, in our work, we never ever use terms like, I mean, I'll hit a student over the head with a baseball bat if they use terms like mothership or ship or UFO or things like that. We don't do that ever. So these things are transiting in and out. But they also have these plasma tools that they use, and these are the UAPs that you see. Nobody in them, but there is something, an intelligence controlling them. So we've studied quite a bit of those, and I was the first member when I was a captain. I was on the first UAP meeting ever. All of these new agencies, all these new hip pocket organizations. Are just a shadow of what we were, and they're not going to answer the question. So we met off campus at the BDM Corporation SCIF, because they did a lot of top secret work for the government. A SCIF is a sensitive compartmented information facility where it's a Faraday cage plus acoustically neutral, all kinds of other stuff. So we're there. I was the youngest member of the first meeting ever to study this UFO UAP phenomenon. And that was a long time ago, and nobody's made any progress except us, because we understand a good deal about the nature of these entities, these intelligent entities that are semi-material. They've been called also ultra-terrestrials, and I like that term too. So Jacques Vallée and I are on the same sheet of music in terms of what we're dealing with, at least generally speaking. It's these guys. So I have a lot of examples, quite a few examples on my website of taking the actual photography of what any reasonable person would say is a UAP and tracking it back to its source. Now, some of these spherical objects, for instance, the ones that cut crop circles, they're actually videos of these spherical objects cutting a crop circle. You find them on the internet. The agent, where they are directed from to cut the crop circle, believe it or not, and we do work for the Russian government on this, is Mars. They're from an underground location on Mars where these sentient machines, robots, essentially sentient robots, are directing the construction of a crop circle. And the way they do it is very interesting. They have some flux or beam or something like that. I have no idea how to describe it. It could be 100 million years ahead of us in terms of technology, and technology is a misnomer in that case. But they can create tools to cut these crop circles. And what they do is they take nitrogen and carbon and whatever other elements xenon or whatever they need to make this tool at a distance. And then the tool is designed to cut the crop circle, cuts the crop circle, and when it's finished, it just dissipates back into its elemental air, back into the atmosphere too. So pretty neat things to be able to use remote viewing to discern, and that's one of them. But again, I'm going to make a long story short, but it's important to point this out. This is 40 years of research, particularly the last 30 on the phenomena, and that is this: despite all our attempts as technical remote viewers to establish contact with the ultra terrestrials themselves, it sort of like direct contact too. It's failed. It's failed. They keep pointing us somewhere else. Every time we use a different attack mechanism for targeting, they point somewhere else, and all the somewhere else's are to Bigfoot. Bigfoot and the UFO phenomenon are indirectly or directly connected somehow. So they want us talking to Bigfoot. So what I've done in the last 2 years particularly is establish, I live in the Sacramento area, establish the nearest recurring Bigfoot activity. And you can ask me questions about that. And that turns out to be the El Dorado and the Stanislaus National Forest, which are only a couple of hours from where I live. So in April, I begin a 1-year project by setting up and I guess communicating with, if I want to communicate with the system at large, communicating with Bigfoot. Bigfoot, try to shoot it, turns into an orb. So there's some people out there that are just flat out stupid. I mean, and that system out there is not going to deal with stupid people. So we've used technical remote viewing to establish where the recurring activity is, pinpoint activity. They come and go, yes, but when they come and go to the same places. And they know about us, the system knows about us, because there's definitely a higher consciousness connection elements that are inherent in that system. All these years of study, they've been watching us. But that's what they want. They want us talking to Bigfoot.
Well, I would like to have a conversation as long as it was civilized. I don't think I want to get into any squabbles with a Bigfoot. But so, what about Russia and Ukraine? What's going on there? Where is that headed? Because I know you have a lot of insight into that as well.
Yeah, I lived in Ukraine for many, many years. My house was blown up at the start of the war. Well, the start of the war was 8 years of being bombarded by the Kiev government, with drunk artillerymen. Anyway, my house was caught by one of them. I have photos of all my dead neighbors laying in the street. And the Russian army, my fiance's stepfather was a navigation officer on a Russian boomer, the Karolina, which is decommissioned now too. He and I, when we first met, didn't get along real well. But he asked me to join the Russian forces against Ukraine. I said, I can't do that. I have 2 goddaughters in Odessa. I have friends in the rest of Ukraine. You can't ask me to fight against, my friends like that. This is not the American Civil War. And so they understood that. But whatever you need to know about the war, current and future, I can tell you that in the next 6 months, that war is going to come to a standstill. The Russians are going to take everything to the east of the Dnieper River and keep it, because those are Russian-speaking people that were. I could go into a lot of detail, but the Russian-speaking people, and even the Serbs, the Czechs, and the Romanians and the Poles and the Hungarians are going to take back their historical land that all of a sudden within 2 days was fenced off at the end of World War II. So they're going to take that back, and what's going to be left of Ukraine is going to be a landlocked small little country that was a shadow of its former self, and Kiev will still be the capital.
So, do you have any other predictions for 2024? Anything that we need to be aware of?
I have a prediction, but it has nothing to do with remote viewing. It's just a personal guess. And my guess is that there'll be a false
Okay.
flag to preempt elections in November. And so that's what I'm
I
expecting.
think that's probably a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, it's not the first time we've heard that prediction or something similar.
yeah, one of the possible false flags that we're looking at in terms of a catalog is a small dirty bomb in one of the big cities, New York or Austin, something like that, where martial law is declared nationwide.
We can hope. We can still hope, right?
Yeah, we can hope.
Not me.
Ryan, did you have any other questions that you wanted to ask tonight?
I'm sure that I could think of some. I mean, remote viewing is such an interesting topic. I've watched a number of documentaries, interviews with Uri Geller, Russell Targ, those guys, and I don't know. It's fascinating the things that they come out of these remote viewing sessions, and then, I mean, just the level of accuracy and how some people kind of refuse to accept the validity of it. But I'm
Yeah,
wondering, do you, Ed, see a whole lot of pushback to what you do? Do people tend to think that you're a little woo or a little out there, as some of our other guests have put it? Not about you, but about themselves.
oh, of course. I mean, 40 years into this, I took it out of the deep dark world of intelligence in 1991, Ted Koppel and that show. But no, of course. But I just keep in mind the old adage of first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. That's the long and short of it too. This stuff, I'm going to introduce it. I introduce technical remote viewing at the grassroots level. Our and scientists can think whatever they want. A lot of fine scientists, are now on my sheet of music as well. A note about Uri Geller, though he's not a remote viewer. He's a psychic. Psychokinesis and telekinesis are sister science.
Well,
They're our sister science, and we're very much interested in them. In fact, we've used technical remote viewing to gain insight into the Geller effect. So what we do is we take an instance, a past instance, where someone like Uri Geller, way back. I don't want to go into any more details. We take an instance where a person, a Russian or an American, is actually performing an act of psychokinesis or telekinesis, where reasonable researchers will say, yes, this was not faked. Okay, so we take that and we devote 2 weeks to looking at the event itself. We have a last page in our central remote viewing sessions that after about an hour and a half, that last page in diagrammatic form has all the essential information about the problem and the solution in diagrammatic form. So we look at that diagram after we collect the information, and we say, okay, what's present in the diagram as context? Okay, well here's the person that executed the telekinesis event. Here's the chairs in the room. Here's the researchers. Here's this, that, the other thing. And then we're left with unknowns. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. A couple of those unknowns, particularly the how. We got the who. We got the where. We got the why. We know that it was an experiment, and that kind of thing. And it's the how that we're interested in. And in diagrammatic form, are sketches,
Right.
several, either 1, 2, or 3, of something that we have never seen before. And so from that point on, as follow-on sessions, we remote view only those diagrammatic aspects and see what that is. So we've gained a lot of information. Our goal is to model it. Like Ingo Swann discovered a model. He called it the structure for remote viewing. I won't go into all of the the background details. But what I'm after, is a model for psychokinesis. Because you have the model, what can you do? You can teach it, just like you can teach remote viewing. If you look at my autobiography, Tell Me What You See, in the last chapter, I speak fluent Chinese Mandarin. And in the last chapter, I have a hypothetical situation where Chinese kids en masse, sort of like the global village of the damned, are influencing the guidance system on an American ICBM test, that kind of thing too. Well, that kind of stuff, believe it or not, is coming. It's coming. And the U.S. just laughs at that kind of thing, but they're not laughing too much anymore. That's why I'm still around. I'm the keeper of the keys. I'm dealing with terrorists, so I'm reporting, directly to the government. When I told them about the dirty bomb, the Department of Homeland Security knocking on my door. They have to. It's their job. The FBI won't allow AT&T to shut off my phone service because they won't be able to monitor me on the phone. Not to mention, all the internet connections and stuff. So I'm the keeper of the keys. They're going to need me. So, for something big someday. And also, this is an evolving technique. The kind of skills that we have are present nowhere else in the world. I went to St. Petersburg, Russia, to help them out with I met my KGB counterparts. The KGB had an extra sense team. They did not know how to teach remote viewing, but they had an extra sense team composed of some extremely good psychics too. And after the Cold War was over, they asked me to help them set up a business. But the last time I went to St. Petersburg, it was to stop to catch a terrorist that we said to the Russians was going to set a bomb off at the airport, the large airport in St. Petersburg. So I went there to help neutralize him and his team. And I reported my work on the sabotage of the North Sea pipeline. That was done by that was green lighted by the head of MI6, who hates the Russians. I mean, the British hate the Russians, but this guy is just a rabid hater of Russians. And he green lighted that sabotage. The Brits did. So I sent the full report to the Russian ambassador and his military attaché in Washington, D.C., who know me. They know me because of my work in Russia, and I've lived in Russia as well.
All right. Do you care to get into who you think the Antichrist might be, or are we going to wait on that one?
The Antichrist is quite an interesting thing. It's a field effect. It's not at any given time. It could be a person, but in this particular time, at this moment, it's something else. And I outline all the something else, all of it, all the details, including the background in Remote Viewing Matrix website. It's there in the forums. All of it, and it's a little bit too dicey to get into on your show. I think we will both be not only lambasted, but
fair enough,
strung up.
Well, we don't want that.
No.
All right. Well, do you want to tell them again where they can find your books and your website? You got
my website is remoteviewingmatrix.com, and all the learning materials as well as my forum is there. So. Today, as I told you, in a little bit, I'll be back to work on this, the remains of this child, and I'm on the road. I have a Jeep. I have to have a Jeep or 4-wheel drive because many of these, it's 4 hours. John Walsh was aware of this. 4 hours between an abduction, a rape, a murder, and a disposal of a child. And the disposals are somewhere where the perpetrator does not want to be found, the evidence to be found, obviously. So that's usually way out in the boondocks. So I have a Jeep to take care of that, and I do it myself. So I just stand there, call the sheriff, and it's over. Again, I do not work with the parents, because if you work with the parents, and of course I had to experience this the first 10 years of my work, the parents will thank you. Especially my work in Japan. I worked a lot for TV Asahi in Japan, and the Japanese parents are very, very thankful that a foreigner, because the police These kids fall off the radar screen in 2 weeks. The police don't care. But here comes a foreigner from a foreign country to help solve the children's case. So they're very, very thankful. But in America, what happens is you can't say body. That's the first thing. Parents want to believe that kid's walking back through that door, and they will till the final hours. So you can't say body. Yeah. That's number one. Number two, when the kid is still alive, and if you're not finding them immediately, they start thinking that their child's dead, and then they have to go through the grieving process. And part of the next part of the grieving process is anger. Who do you think they take the anger on? I had to learn all this stuff for myself. So, that kind of thing. So, like I say, I love my work very much, and I know it's important to teach people this, so I can step aside. And I'm sort of semi-retired now. My pros and all the video streaming stuff is on the website for people if they want to go that route. It's a dedication like any other skill. It's a little bit more complex than skateboarding or skiing, but it's worth learning.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate all your insight into everything, and we'd love to have you back on sometime. If you have anything that you come out with new that you want to promote, we'd love to have you back on. So just let us know.
Yeah.
Final thoughts after a quick break. Welcome back, Crypt Keepers. Ryan, what are your final thoughts? I know we didn't get real deep into remote viewing. We got into a lot of different stuff, but is there anything that you would like our listeners to know?
Yeah, this is kind of like when we talked to Karen Wilkinson, that we talked for a reasonably long time, but I don't feel like we really scratched the surface too much. I think it's a topic that there's so much depth to, and especially, and I was saying after the recording had stopped that his life is kind of like a John le Carre novel. So I think even just apart from remote viewing, I think there are a lot of other things that he could tell us, if he's willing and able to, that would probably be very interesting to us and our listener.
And our dogs.
And the dog.
I think there's going to be something very interesting left over in a safe deposit box that maybe one of his grandkids will inherit on their 21st birthday or something like that. I feel like there's leaks coming, but maybe I shouldn't say that. No,
it could be. It's definitely something that would work with the kind of movie he gets involved with, advising on and all that. So why not? Yeah. His life kind of sounds like a movie.
Sounds like a lot of fun. A lot of bad stuff, trying to find the kids, but a lot of good stuff too.
It sounds interesting, and it sounds like a lot of other military guys I've met, where once you're done, it's like, man, civilian life just looks so boring. I don't think I can handle it.
We can barely handle it, Ryan. We're civilians.
We're barely civilians.
I know, we're civilians.
We're... That's better. That's better than any joke I would come up with.
Yeah, civilians. I like it. That's our army. Civilians. All right. Well, I guess that means we don't have anything else useful for you guys tonight. So thanks for listening to Cryptique. Please like, subscribe, and share. Socials are all in the notes. You can email us what you think at cryptiquepodcast@gmail.com. You can check out our cool merchandise at cryptiquepodcaststore.com. And like we said, it's pretty cold here. You could buy us a coffee. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/cryptiquepi. And remember, remote viewing is the art of seeing without seeing. a dance of consciousness that transcends the limits of physical perception. Good evening, Crypt Keepers.